Alrighty guys, welcome back to another one. Today we're doing something I think is awesome. I love slugs and I love 10 gauge. So a viewer sent these. I'm not sure if he wants names, so I'm not going to name you. If you do, leave it in the comments and I'll pin your comment if you happen to see this. I do want to show this right away. Look at that right there. These are 3 times that right now. Not quite 20, but very close to it. So I don't know what decade these are from, but they are old. Could be 80s, could be 90s. If any of you guys watching, let me know. I believe these are from the 80s. This box looks really, really cool to me. A lot cooler than the current Federal Blue Box Slug box. That was weird to say. But yeah, this got a bunch of colors on it. White, gold, black, red. And I don't know, the overall design and logo is just much better. Has a deer on it. This side of the box says Federal Magnum High Shock Slug, 10 gauge, 1 3/4 ounce, not ounce, 3.5 inch. I guess that's the stock keeping unit maybe. Federal 10-3. I'm not sure what the 3 would mean, but RS rifled slug. What's that 3 mean? Don't know. Anyway, top of the box says Federal High Shock Slug Magnum Hollow Point. The new tagline, if you want to call it that, for Federal slugs is Maximum Rifled Hollow Point Slug. I think High Shock sounds cooler. The other side of the box, same thing. Bottom of the box is warnings. Don't want to read that. And the back of the box is more warnings. Barcode, lot number, made in USA. And there's actually a picture of the slug itself, and that is indeed what the Federal 10 gauge slugs look like. They're quite tall, but they are undersized. They are 747 diameter. At least the modern production ones are. The older ones might be full bore. I hope they are. And yeah, that's a big chunk of lead. So yeah, box looks really cool. The hull looks even cooler. This is actual brass, by the way. It's not steel. At least, I'll check that in a moment. The Federal hulls I have for 10 gauge of this style have brass, not steel. But that doesn't mean anything. That could be steel. I'll check it. But Federal primer could be a 209A. Could be the regular 209 that's now discontinued. I'd imagine that's still a 209A. Head stamp says 10 gauge made in USA with a duck on it. Pretty cool. 10 gauge is still popular for, waterfowl. Slug is it's somewhat oxidized, but you'd expect that due to this age. The roll looks beautiful. It is nice and even. Not much of a taper on it. You can actually see where the roll stops right here at my thumbnail. Catching the light, you can see the line. And it is a hollow point, although not much of one. It's certainly no Mr. Hollow Point, but it's there. And the hull says Federal, again with a duck on it, Magnum Super Slug. That's funny. I don't know why it's funny to me, but it is. That says High Shock Slug. This says Super Slug. A little inconsistent there, Federal. But anyway, let's crack this open and see how they put it together. So for a charge in this one, there is 36.5, 36.4, close enough. And it is the same black flake type powder that we see in a lot of Federal shells. I'm sure it's all different burn speeds. It kind of has to be. Target shells do not have much powder. It's like 17 grains. But yeah, that's quite a hefty amount of powder. That's basically double what's in a 12 gauge target load. And yes, 10 gauge is bigger, but still, if you double that charge and put it in a 10 gauge with a big heavy slug like that, probably not going to be a good day for you. So, different burn speed, but same looking powder. Anyway, moving on. Look at the hull next. Obviously, this being 10 gauge, it is a 3.5 inch brown hull with a paper base wad. You can see the primer in there. That appears to be a medium height base wad. It's not, hollowed out. Not hollowed out. It's not lower than the primer. It is right flush with it, and it's not taller than the primer. That is medium height, and obviously this is straight wall. As far as I know, 10 gauge hulls never had a tapered version, although 8 gauge did. Winchester did make the compression formed hulls in 8 gauge industrial, but as far as I'm aware, no tapered 10 gauge hulls have ever been made. And I did confirm this is brass, not steel. A magnet will not stick to it, but it does stick to the primer. So, brass. Same as the hulls I have, except mine were steel shot hulls with T-shot. Yeah, brass. You don't see that much on modern shells that aren't premium Target shells. You know, like a AA or STS, things like that. That's pretty much all that uses actual brass anymore. But no, that's brass too. So after that, we just have a 1/4 inch plastic gas seal. Nothing really special to note here. It's just a plastic gas seal. Again, 1/4 inch. That hole in it won't hurt anything. Nobody needs to worry about that. Anyway, there are 5 1/5 inch nitro cards here, making a, stack of an inch. But yeah, there is absolutely no cushion wadding in here at all. It is just a bunch of nitro cards, and these things are hard. Imagine whenever you fire that, the slug right here would get squished, obturate to the bore. Because I can tell you right now, that is not 10 gauge bore diameter. That is noticeably smaller. But I'll measure that. Yeah, I did booger it up with the needle nose pliers. That has a pretty tiny hollow point. Anyway, let's weigh this real quick, and then I'll actually measure it, because I can guarantee you, once again, it's not, full bore 10 gauge. 763.5 grains, 1.746 ounces. It's supposed to be 1 3/4. I guarantee it was, but my pliers ate a little bit of a chunk of it. Oh well. And this is pure soft lead, and it is heavy. By the way, the box is not listed, or the velocity is not listed on the box, but the modern one's listed at 1280. So yeah, it is a big heavy slug, but it's moving slow. It has just under 3,000 foot-pounds of muzzle energy, which is pretty powerful, but a lot of 12 gauge slugs on the market are more powerful than that. Yes, this is a 10 gauge slug, but it is not very powerful. 1 3/4 ounces. Now in 10 gauge, you can push that easily to 1500 FPS. Why don't they just make this faster? 1280 FPS is too slow for a slug, especially a 10 gauge slug. Okay, so I measured it. Yes, it is under bore. It is 0.757, which is actually 10 thousandths more than the modern production ones, which are listed at 747 diameter at BPI. I did measure one, it came out right to 7.5, so it probably was 747. I didn't have a good set of calipers at the time. Now I do, and I can get within the 10,000th. And yeah, it is still undersized, but at least a little bit bigger than the modern Federal 10 gauge slugs are. So this one's very simple, just a hull, powder, plastic gas seal, more nitro cards than the law allows, and a big hunk of lead. So let's slap this back together and see if I can make it look presentable. Now, I do have a breakdown on the modern Federal 10 gauge slugs that I bought that box last year. So if you want to go check that out, go ahead. They are done a little bit differently than this. They don't have so many nitro cards. Anyway, guys, I'll get back with you in one moment. Okay, here it is put back together. It did go back together just fine, although I did accidentally touch the nose of the slug with the roll crimp tool. It's not a deep neck roll crimp tool, which is what you needed for this. That slug is really tall, and there are a ton of nitro cards, so not really enough clearance. I lost a little bit of meat on the slug. That's okay. It is nice and tight. No rattle. We're good to go. The roll itself does look pretty nice. So we've shot quite a few of these Federal 10 gauge slugs. They don't have much recoil because of the slow velocity, and well, it's not a full 2 ounce or 2 ounce, 2 1/4 ounce turkey load, things like that. No, and 10s are really heavy guns, so not a lot of recoil. and we like recoil. But there it is, guys, a breakdown on a vintage, over here's the box, let me get it, a vintage box of Federal 10 gauge slugs. These are really cool. Very thankful that you sent these to me. No, we will not be shooting this. If we decide to do a range video on Federal 10 gauge slugs, we will use the modern ones because, honestly, this is going in my ammo collection. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. This was a fun video. We'll see you in the next one.